2024 is going to surprise to the downside. I think, again, not collapse, not depression, but I just think that as everyone was on one side of the boat last year, negative, I think everybody's come back on the other side of the boat, positive. And yet just about every indicator that you can look at from a macro perspective, leading economic indicators just made new cycle lows. I mean, like the lowest in the last 4 cycles. In fact, I don't know that we've ever, I think this is right, I don't think we've ever had this many consecutive negative readings of LEI ever. Like, crazy. And so that's one. PMIs are down. Now, PMIs have turned. Raul's been talking about this. I know you were just talking with Jim Bianco. Jim may have been talking about PMIs. But I think there's a lot of macro data that's a little negative. I think first quarter GDP is going to surprise a lot of people how low it is, but that's a cyclical thing. And even though they seasonally adjust, they don't seem to do it right. So it's always the lowest quarter. I think they could be closing in on 0. I don't know that it'll go negative. Depends on weather. You know, if we have a weather shock, like I haven't heard any forecast of polar vortex or anything like that. You know, in fact, to that point, it's funny. I haven't heard anybody talking about global warming anymore because we've had, cold weather. I don't know. But weather, I think, is the swing factor that I can't predict. What did everybody miss last year? That's probably one of the biggest things people missed was the third year of the presidential cycle. So there's lots of 4-year cycles. There's crypto 4-year cycle. There's this presidential 4-year cycle. The third year, so the year before the election, is always the best year of the stock market. It averages 16%. Okay? So on average, it's 16%. And that clearly is what people missed. And that fiscal spend, people had no idea we were going to give hundreds of billions of dollars to a bunch of money launderers in Ukraine. We had no idea that we were going to be back in another war that Ms. Yellen says we can clearly afford 2 wars. Like, what? You're financing wars? Oh, that's what big money does. It finances wars. Central banks, that's what they were created for. Back in the 1600s, they've been financing wars ever since. So I think we all missed that. And that changes. The fourth year, the election year, is on average a muted year for markets. It's, on average about 6%, which is, not high, not low. But the swing factor is what you're talking about, which is we are definitely leaning socialist, communist, like handout, totalitarian. I mean, I hear some of the stuff I'm like, are we in Venezuela? Are we in Argentina? Are we in the Weimar Republic? I mean, that's actually a scary, scary thing. I read this. A guy did a long series of posts. I wish I could give him credit, but I can't remember his name. On Twitter, going through the history of Weimar. Oh my gosh, I had no idea. And you look at the things that they did, and you look at what's happening in America, it's like, oh my gosh. I mean, it's like the same playbook, like down to a whole bunch of stuff. My eyes were just like, why? I mean, my eyes were wide open. And that resulting hyperinflation, it was that could never happen because we have the world reserve currency. Well, guess what's happening right now? There's a chipping away. There's an assault on petrodollar status. And Saudi's now talking to Russia and China, and they're kind of giving us the hand to the face. I'm not saying it's going to happen tomorrow, but I think we're closer to a loss of control event than people think.
Hey, money. 구독과 좋아요 부탁드리겠습니다. 비트코인은 롤러코스터를 탔습니다. 깜짝 선물을 주는 암호산타처럼 고저사이를 오가죠. 더버즈. 잠재적 자리 후 2024년 4월 반등이 예상됩니다. BTC는 100% 폭등했고요. 지금은 모두 손에 땀을 쥐고 휴정 코스를 보며 2024년을 엿보고 있죠? 뭐가 나올까요? 확인해보죠. 마이너스 비트코인의 100만 달러. 왜들 난리예요? 뭐가 퍼펙트 스톰을 만들고 있어요? 외환관리국 승인, 한정된 공급 돈의 쓰나미, 그리고 짜잔. 공급 수요 가격 충격. 우리 암호화폐에는 음악이죠. 비금전 등록기 소리 들리죠. 하지만 파티는 끝나지 않았습니다. 버리얼 비전 시류에 합류했죠. 2025년까지 비트코인 50만 100만 달러가 예상돼요. 파월은 비트코인을 칭송합니다. 위험 경주의 가장 빠른 말이라고 하죠. 수익이 늘어납니다. 월스트리트 암호화폐 말이 될 줄 알고 20억 달러짜리 쇼의 커튼 뒤엔 뭐가 있을까요? 모아 파월은 화기 단속국을 지목하고 있어요. 비트코인의 결핍과 세계 유동성 추세, 고위험 세계적 유동성 경향과 고위험 고수익으로 평가받고 있죠. 고수익 록스타 경제지표에 크게 걸었습니다. 비트코인의 대화력은 안전띠 매세요. 멋진 여행이 될 거예요. 막이 내렸지만 드라마는 전개되죠. 비밀 소스로는요. 비트코인은 흙물에 연결됐어요. 10억 달러짜리 확보에 대해 어떻게 생각하세요? 마크 유스코와 계속 논의하죠.
Yeah, my memory is starting to go a little bit, but I cannot remember a time when people got it so wrong. Like, and look, myself included. I mean, I'm not throwing everyone else under the bus. Like, oh, I was so right. No. I maybe wasn't 100. You know, if you had a meter of no recession to always, I maybe wasn't 100% sure, but I was looking at the liquidity data and I was looking at a bunch of things, and it just seemed that Jerome was intent on, hike until something broke. I guess the one thing that I think people did miss, and we can take a little credit because we did talk about it, and I think we got it, although then got another piece of the prediction like epically wrong, which I'll get to. So one thing we did talk about in November, December last year was that China had turned on the liquidity machine. While the Fed was reducing liquidity, China had pumped $1 trillion, there's that T word again, $1 trillion into the economy. And so the thing I got just totally wrong, like more wrong than maybe anything I've ever gotten, was I looked at that and said, well, clearly then Chinese stocks will do great. The dragon market will roar. And it's been a straight downhill. I mean, we're at 5-year lows. And then on the last day of last week, the government came out and started to limit the amount of time you can play games. And Tencent was down 15% in a day. So it's not that I can take credit for that one either, but I think people missed how much liquidity was being created. And then clearly we all missed that we'd have the third largest banking collapse in history, and that would be a good thing because the Fed would then pump another $300 billion into the economy. So I think we just all missed liquidity. We collectively, and this is a we show. I mean, we have our own opinions, but at the end, we are projecting, some information. We got crypto right.
I think we did too.
We nailed it. We nailed it. And when people were throwing stones, like, no way, you don't understand. Well, there are cycles for a reason. And we just kept talking about the cycle and kept talking about how we were going to be in this crypto summer and that we were going to, drift toward fair value. We had Tim on and we talked about fair value and people finally got a sense of the Metcalfe's Law model. And, here we are at 43.44, right below the fair value of 51. We're still not to the halving, so we still got time to get there in that slow drift. But the fireworks are about to start. And so I'm going to give us a little pat on the back for that one.
Crypto exchange Coinbase says that it has extensively prepared for spot Bitcoin exchange traded fund, ETF, approvals by the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC. Most spot Bitcoin ETF applicants have named the NASDAQ-listed crypto platform as the custodian for their Bitcoin. The U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, could make a decision regarding the approval of spot Bitcoin exchange-traded funds, ETFs, on Tuesday or Wednesday, according to a report. Anticipation for the first-ever U.S. spot Bitcoin ETFs intensified last week as prominent asset managers updated their filings with the SEC.
영상이 도움이 되셨다면 구독과 좋아요 부탁드리겠습니다. 새해 복 많이 받으세요. 크립토7이었습니다.